Hello, Canada Files viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of Canada Files. Today, you're seeing the 13th episode of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. I am here with Laith Marouf. We need to take a bit of a break. Laith, can you quickly explain why?
Well, I just had a small surgery and had to recover. Couldn't be sitting for 2 weeks.
All good, Laith. We're glad to hear you've recovered well. So that's just why we didn't have the show the last 2 weeks. Also, for the people complaining about the background, I will find a more Canada-centric background. Eventually, just give me time. I'm busy. But let's
Or
get
Vietnam background also would work.
Yeah, that also would work. One of the two, anyways. But Laith, we do have a lot to talk about. I mean, from the West Bank situation escalating, from Hezbollah's retaliation around targeting Israeli intelligence, and so much more. So, can you take us into maybe just some of the recent critical events, maybe leaning into the themes I talked about?
Yeah, the West Bank, it's been now over 24 hours where the largest Israeli military incursion into areas where the Palestinians reside, specifically in the north of the West Bank, in Jenin, Tul Karim, Nablus, Tubas, and there's tens of martyrs since the beginning of this operation. Yesterday is still ongoing, and there's also targeting of medical staff and hospitals, all the major hospitals in Jenin, Tul Karim, and Nablus were raided. The medical staff were kind of lined up on walls and interrogated, beaten. So this is showing you how what is happening in Gaza is now a prelude to what the Zionists want to do in the West Bank. And we've heard the foreign affairs minister of the Zionist colony saying that they should basically do to the West Bank what they did to Gaza, and they're already implementing it. We see how Ben Gvir being in charge of the West Bank and all the military there is translating to this program as we see it of many villages in the West Bank being emptied of their inhabitants at gunpoint by the settlers and the Israeli military. And now we see the major population centers in the north being targeted because there is a plan to build settlements there, colonies, and that cannot happen with the existence of these major population centers, Palestinian population centers, specifically Jenin being a ground for resistance for decades now, and we see now Jenin and Tul Karim and others being punished for the resistance. Some of the resistance leaders in these towns have been assassinated. Last night, for instance, there was a big standoff in Tul Karim, and the leadership of the Palestinian resistance there were assassinated. This is continuing. We don't know where it's going to go, but it seems like the plan is rolling out. The West is doing nothing. It's actually encouraging it. And I don't see any end in sight.
All right, Laith. Well, thank you for that. Do you mind talking to a little bit? What really struck me, the this intelligence and striking, and in terms of Hezbollah's drone footage, right? Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's not something popularly understood well enough.
Yes, Hezbollah finally responded to the assassination of Commander Fuad Shukr, the commander-in-chief of the Hezbollah military wing, the Islamic resistance in Lebanon. It took them almost a month, but the response was calculated and very precise. it was designed not to allow the Israelis to have an excuse for a full-out war. So what we saw is Hezbollah targeting 11 bases in the West Bank, sorry, in the Golan, the Syrian occupied Golan Heights, and in the north of Palestine in the Galilee, with 340 missiles as well as tens of drones that overwhelmed and targeted the air defense systems there, while advanced drones targeted the main base of the military intelligence service of the Zionists, the Amman, 10 kilometers just outside the municipal borders of Tel Aviv. And at the same time, there was an attack on the main dispatch for the Israeli Air Force, the main base for the dispatch, halfway between Tel Aviv and the border with Lebanon. And so this is clearly was designed to target parts of the Israeli military and security that were responsible for the assassination of Fuad Shukr. Until now, the Israelis have a media blackout instituted by government order, and no international media or local media was able to show us any of the destruction that happened in the Amman base, the Glilot base, and or the air dispatch base. What we know is that Hezbollah specifically targeted the head of Amman, and we're waiting for confirmation of his liquidation. From the speech of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, we understood that Hezbollah considers the score settled with this, except if the Israelis insist that there was no damage and nobody liquidated, then Hezbollah will have to, according to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of the party, during his speech, Hezbollah will have to hit again if the Israelis don't admit that there was any damage done and or anybody killed, and or if the Israelis attack Lebanon again, this will open the score to be settled. So this is in general what happened with the response of Hezbollah.
Thanks, Laith. So speaking of Lebanon, I think it's a great transition. Dimitri Lascaris, Canadian journalist, eco-socialist, he was in Lebanon. So you talked with him recently. He did some reporting in Lebanon. Just want to give the guy a shout out for the work and the risks that he's taken. But in terms of Canada, there is stuff happening. I think the most interesting, relevant one, of course, is this situation where a Montreal firm is going to supply 50,000 explosives to the Israeli military, but they're not doing it through a new weapons export permit. They're doing it through this 1956 Defense Production Sharing Agreement, right? So basically, the Canadian military production companies, they're treated like part of the U.S. space. That was consciously done, and now it allows Canada, like I said, they can get it. They can get these weapons to Israel, and they're not exporting new stuff. They're not giving new permits, but it's a load of crap. So, Laith, what do you think about this? Just open mockery of even the sham resolution that we saw in Parliament in the spring.
Well, I would blame the Canadian activists for what is happening right now, because it's in the hand of the Canadian activists to go and shut down these factories. It's also, I would blame the Canadian labor unions, who have passed, all of them, BDS motions over the last 2 decades, and should actually stand for these resolutions and go and refuse work in these factories that are building these weapons. So the Canadian government and the Canadian elite are shameless, genocidal colonists that are white supremacists, that support Jewish white supremacy, Christian white supremacy, secular white supremacy. There's nothing I can say about that. There's no shame in what they're doing. So what is shameful is how the activists and the unions are behaving. They are to blame. If they don't do anything, well, the Canadian government and the elite in Canada, the white supremacist elite, will continue doing what they're doing because they can walk all over the Canadian public and nothing will happen, according to what we've seen over the last 10 months. The Canadian public are all wimps. Okay, so anyone that claims to support Palestinian liberation and is against the genocide in Gaza has a duty to actually go and take direct action to stop the manufacturing of these weapons and the delivery of these weapons to the Zionist colony. That's all I can say about that, because it's just a circular argument to continue talking about what the Canadian government is doing and what these manufacturers are doing.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, there was a comment we got on the last episode that I want to read out, just in fairness to the person. You can respond as you may. We are still in front of McGill escalating every day, and there is autonomous action like Laith recommends happening across the city. This is about the encampment, but it's a general point about the activists. Please stop assuming everything ended when the encampment ended. This is not the case. There is now a Palestinian action in Montreal. I just wanted to reference that simply in the fact that somebody raised that complaint, and we can deal with the criticism. So,
well, it's great. It's great that there's a Palestine Action Montreal, and they should be taking action, as their name entails. Up until now, all I see is the usual liberal demonstration kind of type of things. When we start seeing action, I'll believe it and I'll support these people and I'll encourage them even more. But up until now, I don't see that happening yet.
I'm not saying that I've seen a wave of action, but simply want to be a little fair to them. So in terms of the labor front, though, there has been some brouhahas about that, specifically around Fred Hahn, who is the CUPE Ontario president. He's the national general vice president of CUPE. Now, he got targeted for an August 11th video on Facebook. It's basically about the Israeli bombings, residential buildings in the Gaza Strip, and Israel's participation in the recent Olympics. There was a complete meltdown about that by the Zionists, of course. You had the Ontario Labour Minister harassing Hahn actually in person. You had Doug Ford going after him, but this was partially made possible because you had the CUPE National Executive Board calling on Hahn to resign from his position. So you have just the labor leadership turning on one of the people, and it's not exactly like Hahn was a strident person for Palestinian liberation. He would support Palestine, but not exactly a strident liberation activist, right? And they went to war on him, have absolutely gone to war on him, and they got embarrassed so badly by Ford's comments, CUPE National, that they needed to release a statement basically criticizing Ford. And it seems like they're somewhat backing off, but it just kind of shows how comical the state of the labor leadership is in most of Canada. That's someone who will mildly stand for Palestine, right? In the greater context of the rest of the world, that's very mild. Stands for Palestine, is getting this viciously attacked. So just really want your thoughts there, Laith. You've had your own dealings with the unions, so I think you'll have a lot to say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I saw the petition supporting Hahn, reaching something like around 200,000, I think, signatures, or just below that. I don't remember the last number. When I was seeing this petition, I was thinking to myself, why aren't people calling for the resignation of the rest of the executive of CUPE National, right? I mean, it's not only about supporting Hahn, it's about condemning the collaborationist labor union leadership that buckled under the pressure of white Jewish supremacists, okay, and the pressure of fascist government in Ontario and outside Ontario in the country. So this is where it has to go. The labor unions membership, CUPE Ontario specifically membership, since they're under the leadership of Hahn, should be mobilized for a general strike. You know, we were talking just now about the manufacturing of weapons. Why aren't the unions going on strike? Okay, why aren't they taking action? I just saw a few comments about a possibility of a student strike in Canada. Well, that's great. Let's have also a labor strike. Canadian workers are complicit in the genocide in Palestine. And, you know, this we also saw, I think, you know, this CUPE national executive, they represent provincial CUPE groupings or unions. What is the other provincial CUPE leadership think? Did we hear any statements from CUPE in other provinces? I didn't see anything. I was looking for stuff. I didn't. Maybe I'm wrong. But this shows you how weak, actually, and ineffectual these unions are, not only in defending one of their own, but defending their own rights and following up on resolutions that were passed by their membership, the BDS resolutions that were passed in many of these provinces by CUPE. So I think, you know, even though it's a good outcome until now in terms of Hahn standing his ground and this petition in his support, even those things are not strong enough. You know, we can do better than that. And I think the unions are responsible up until now for a lot of the blood that is spilling in Palestine.
Right. So the one other thing I want to mention was this case of I believe it's a city councillor. Yes, Ariel Troster in Ottawa. There's a whole brouhaha because the the Pride organization in Ottawa that's running the Pride Parade, they made some mild support for Palestine, right? And you had all the the liberals, you had the mayor, Zionist organizations got almost many people to resign, quit. There was some brouhaha even with the police pulling out members that they had guaranteed to limit how much the march could do. But there was a counselor for Somerset, Ariel Troster, who actually criticized the attacks on the parade organization for actually making some decent stand in for Palestine. Just want to simply mention it so it doesn't go by the wayside that there seems like someone like Ariel Troster is at least fighting. But that's all I can really say there, because other than that, it does not seem like she's really getting supported. Now, maybe they just want to make sure I'm safe there. But yeah, that's pretty much it, Laith. So I think one interesting thing now, again, it's just not really the end of the world. But I mean, it's a good effort at the end of the day. It's that there's going to be actions at CRA, Canadian Revenue Agency offices, for the mass targeting, demanding the mass targeting of the charities in Canada that fund and support Israel, right? And of course, that this isn't the end of the world, but I think it is a moderately good action. But it'll be a moderately good action when there's a wave of actions around, right? I just want to clarify it in that context. It's just not bad on its own. So, any thoughts there, Laith?
Yeah, I mean, the Pride Ottawa organizers, I think, have shown leadership within the LGBTQ community organizations are finally taking a direct position on the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza and the rest of Palestine. And I think the larger pride organizations across the country must follow suit. It was, I think, a very important action, although it's just a statement. But look at the ripples that it created. Look at how it outed all the leadership, political leadership in Ottawa, for being fascist, for being really just using and abusing LGBTQ rights to have political clout and to pinkwash the Zionist colony. So if there's any LGBTQ organizations across the country that want to maintain their credibility, they have to follow suit with the Pride Ottawa. And in terms of the CRA, I think there was an article just published in the what is it called, about the Jewish National Fund Canada, and I forgot the name of the publication, the Canadian publication. There's somebody they sent on the ground to investigate some of the spending of the JNF Canada, who has been claiming that they stopped their supply and funding of settlement activities in the West Bank, and clearly it's still continuing. And so the CRA actions are still, I think, half-hearted, because the issue is not only yanking the charitable status of these organizations. The issue is actually prosecuting these organizations for participating in the commission of war crimes. It is a war crime to fund the building of settlements, colonies, and military bases, which the JNF Canada was funding, by the way. They were funding the building of military bases in the West Bank. It wasn't only colonies and confiscation of Palestinian lands. So people need to go further. The demand shouldn't be just about yanking this charitable status. The demand should be about prosecuting the boards of directors, the staff of the JNF for the commission of war crime and the participation in it. And people should be taking direct action, I think, at this point, occupying the JNF offices, going after the board of directors and staff wherever they are. This is the least that should be done.
All right, Laith. Well, thanks for that insight. We're going to leave this episode, Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism, there. Message to the audience: if you appreciate the analysis and the journalism of both the Canada Files and Free Palestine TV, go support the journalism. You can go to Free Palestine, put the link down below. Canada Files will also put the link down below. Go support great journalism. All right, Laith, thank you for co-hosting the show, as always.
Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.